Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to speak with Tracie Sponenberg. She is the former Chief People Officer of the Granite Group. Now, Chief People Officer is an interesting title, and, frankly, Tracie's the only one I've ever heard coin that phrase, but I suspect that we're going to start hearing more and more about that. But coming from an HR background, I think one of the great things about her message is learning how to shift from that compliance base of HR, the regulation side and the don't get sued side, to really looking at people as individuals and how can we enhance their experience while they're with us. It starts at that onboarding process throughout their journey with our organization, but then also how do we exit and how do we learn from them and really try to make that experience really focused on that individual, less so about us as the company, but more so about what is that person's journey along the way. As I mentioned, she did just leave the Granite Group and she's striking out on her own. And it's always scary to do that, but I'm really excited about her journey. And we had a great conversation and I hope you enjoy it. This episode is brought to you by my friends at Moblico. Today, there are more connected devices in the U.S. than there are people. The mobile experience has greatly changed your customers' and employees' behaviors and expectations, including how they communicate and exchange information at home, play, and work. Your customers expect faster service, convenience, and relevancy more than ever before. From custom mobile apps to robust mobile messaging solutions, Moblico provides the most comprehensive end-to-end mobile communication and outbound marketing solution to the wholesale distribution industry. Check out what Moblico has to offer at www.moblicosolutions.com. That's MOBLICO solutions.com. And be sure to let them know you heard about them on the Distribution Talk podcast. Well, hi, Tracie. Welcome to Distribution Talk. Thanks for taking the time to be with me.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
I've been a fan. I've been seeing a lot of your posts over, especially the last year. I've been following that stuff on LinkedIn, and you've been in all kinds of things and frankly, changing different roles here pretty soon, or now actually.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that in a minute. But before we do, I'd love to hear a little bit about how did you get involved with the distribution world and people side of that distribution world? So please take it away.
So I was one of these weird kids that knew what they wanted to do in high school. I don't think many people go, when they're asked when they're, 15, what do you want to do? I want to be in human resources, but I did.
Interesting.
So I had a great role model when I was younger, my aunt.
Oh, okay.
So I carried that through my master's degree and ended up, I actually started more in logistics and distribution. So I started my career for UPS and spent a number of years there.
Oh, great.
So I learned that large global thing and learned that wasn't what I wanted long term. So I did a couple of other things over the years. And then maybe 2011, I ended up in a distribution company, not in the kind of distribution I'm in now, but more vitamin supplements, nutraceuticals. And I found I absolutely loved it. I loved spending time in the warehouses, in the distribution centers. I loved the mix of folks that I got to interact with. I loved the business itself, and I learned a lot. And I had the opportunity to join the Granite Group. I wasn't looking, but in 2015, I get a call from an old mentor of mine that I had followed into a job. And I was in a personal situation where I have a son and two stepdaughters, and their mom had passed away a number of months before. And I was always on a plane, always flying around, and loved my job, but thought there had to be a better way. So probably 2 months later, I thought I blew the interview, thought I was never going to hear from them. I did. I went from being really passive about it to really excited. Ended up getting the job, and something I took for a purely personal reason ended up being a wonderful move for my career.
Isn't that amazing how that happens? It's a difficult set of circumstances, and you're trying to do the best possible by, your family side and personal side. And then you wind up in this. Obviously, I have a passion for wholesale distribution, and, I love the construction related distribution as well. That's what I cut my teeth in. And I think you're right. I love the people I run into. Especially I have a soft spot for the material handling side, and my favorite job in distribution growing up was being a truck driver. So again, I have a soft spot for that role there. and love those folks. So yeah, it is interesting when you kind of fall into these things.
It was a total accident. I guess a really happy accident, but
Hmm.
one that changed my life in so many wonderful ways.
So when you came to the Granite Group, were you immediately focused on HR, or do you do a lot of times HR falls into operations? There's a lot of things that happen there.
Yeah, so my view is pretty strong, and you and I may like slightly disagree on this, so that would be fun
Hmm.
if we talk about this. So
Sure.
I firmly believe that a people department and HR department needs to report into the CEO, because if your
Hmm.
human beings are the most important people in the department, that person, you should have an executive if you're a company of size, and that
Hmm.
person should report to the CEO. That position is every bit as important as a CFO, COO, etc.
Hmm.
We've got a lot of growth there, a lot of opportunity there in our industry, I think, but that's one of my kind of missions to change that. So I came in as a human resources executive reporting to the CEO in a very small team. There were only 1.5 people there.
Hmm.
And it was, a situation where I came in, the company was at a transition point, and I was hands-on and also strategic, and we had a lot of transformation to happen, and it was
Hmm.
really hard work and really fun for a long time. And then COVID, and then it got fun again, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it was a really interesting, fun opportunity. I like the work, so not that I
Hmm.
want to be super hands-on, but I love seeing something through.
So you had mentioned that any company of size should have an executive position in this HR role. The people side. Give me your definition of a size.
Yeah, it's pretty generic.
Yeah, I've got a pretty wide range
Yeah.
of an audience here, and distribution tends to be a very wide ranging from a size standpoint, regardless of the vertical market you serve.
Yeah. I would love to say, and I think we see this more the startup world and the tech world, I'd love to say you hit 100 people, you should have a CPO. A
Hmm.
CPO, and that is often one of the earliest executive hires in companies like that. So I would love that. I think that if there's a company 500 or more, you have to have an executive leader.
Hmm.
That's a large company by most definitions.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And just to clarify, yeah, CPO being Chief People Officer.
Chief People Officer, Chief Human Resources
There you
Officer.
go.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yes. So, we became the people department a number of years ago. And so, yes, thank you. That's not always known.
Well, I don't hear the title that often.
No.
I think obviously I've heard it with you, as I've been following you a bit. But, and again, it sounds like your mission is to change that world and get that to become more of the lexicon in the distribution world.
More common outside. I think we're seeing it more and more. And I think
Hmm.
when you think of it, when you look at the people who make up, certainly humans, right?
Hmm.
But are they resources? And so that term has kind of, human resources has fallen out of favor in recent years. And there's a lot of discussion on that, but people is
Hmm.
one that I like. And we're seeing being the dominant HR title is Chief People Officer. So we have a
Okay.
people operations manager at the Granite Group. We have a people experience manager, and we wrapped everything around that. It was confusing, I think, to people at first. They're like, well, what do you
Yeah.
do? I'm like, it's HR.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
HR, but where our focus is 100% on our people. We lead people first. And so that helps explain it a lot better than human resources, which tends to get pigeonholed as the people who collect your benefits forms and,
Hmm.
chase after you to sign your performance reviews.
So again, you're starting down the trail of really differentiating the two pieces there. So the people that you oversaw, you said, it was only a small team at first, but it sounds to me like, before you left the Granite Group, it had grown just a bit.
It did. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So was there a differentiation between people officer side, again, you're going to be better at explaining this than I am, and a lot of the clerical stuff you just described,
Yeah.
benefits and, maybe talent acquisition, things like that.
Yeah, I think it's more in the mindset and how you approach that. So one of the first things I did was worked with the department, a tiny department, to automate as much as we could. So, I know a lot of companies aren't there. My husband started a new job, and so we are on his benefits, and I filled out physical forms, and I haven't had that in years at jobs I haven't. Like, I'm going, why are we doing
This
this?
is silly. Yeah.
But that's where a lot of companies are. And so when that's what you do, when it takes you an hour to fill out benefits forms, that's the kind of experience that your people have. So what I tried to do, and what I will continue to try to do, is to try to look at everything from a new person's perspective. So
Yeah.
what's my experience when I'm going to be? And at the Granite Group, we focused 100% on the people experience. We wanted everyone to have an incredible individual people experience that we co-created with them. So they were part of that journey. And so we listened and learned from them far more than they did from us. So it's more in a mindset and an approach. Benefits are still important. Talent acquisition is still important. That's all there, but there's a diminished focus on the administration. So I learned to lead by compliance, and I've now really switched to leading with compassion. So I learned that compliance was the main thing, that we were in it, and as HR, we were in it for the business. We were to help the business succeed. It doesn't matter what happens to the people. That's really how I was trained, and I've completely turned around on that we're 100% for the people. If it's not for our people, we don't have a company. So why aren't we treating them as well or better than we're treating our customers?
Very good point. No, I couldn't agree with that more. You were talking about really creating this experience for this associate, in your organization. And that's got to start really at onboarding and even in the not even part of the company yet, in that interview. And I like to look at interviews more as selling. I'm selling
100%.
How great my company is, but
100%. It's a two-way street. Interviews are a two-way street. But when I came in and when I go into new clients, we look at everything from way before somebody starts to think about applying. So what's that reputation of the company? What are the Glassdoor reviews? What does it say on Indeed? What's on Google? What's on other search engines, right? So what are people saying? Setting up alerts and looking at just what's the general feel for the company. So it starts there because you want to know what people are saying about you, because they may be saying things that they may not want to work there, right? Or your former employees. And then it goes all the way through, obviously, everything that happens when somebody's coming in, when they're onboarding, when they're applying, and then when they leave. So we tend to focus on that kind of middle part, which is super important, but we don't focus enough on the before and we don't focus enough on the after. So you want somebody to leave your company. It's always hard, but in as positive a way as possible. And you want to treat them as well as you did treat them on the way in.
It's a fascinating thing, that yes, you're very, in many cases, you're very complimentary and excited and you're welcoming and you're cheerleading at that beginning part. But then a lot of companies, and I was guilty of this as well, is failing on that exiting part. Could you give me a couple of tips on, what makes a really good exit interview?
Yeah. So one of the things we were doing, and then we changed this, we were focusing too heavily. I love data, and I think data tells a story, and it's not everything, but it's certainly important in any company's journey. And if there's anything in the people space, you can usually measure it these days. And so we were taking a lot of time to do exit interviews, to sit down with people face to face. And one of the biggest things that we did, and this is a tip I'd recommend to anyone, is that we outsourced the exit interviews because we were getting maybe a 5% return. People weren't calling back. Maybe they didn't want to talk to us. We outsourced to a firm that does this. It was very inexpensive and got about a 50% return. So we were getting data on what's going on. And I can tell you important things about the company, about managers, all kinds of things. So that's a huge tip because you want that information, but you don't have to gather it in the same old traditional way. And people are actually generally more likely to tell a stranger their experience than they are to tell the company. And certainly we do talk to people on their way out.
Well, it's emotional. It's an emotional situation. Yeah, I would say that a third party, an unbiased third party would probably be a really good strategy to do that.
It's really helpful. And then look at if you have to terminate someone, and you should, there are a lot of companies that are afraid to take action on people that are performance problems. You should give them a chance to correct it and then eventually part ways if that isn't corrected, because that can be deadly for the culture. But that should be happening in all companies, hopefully not too regularly, but it should happen now and again, right?
Sure.
So treat them as respectfully as you can. So don't be standing outside their office holding a box and escorting them out if you can help it. You can quietly turn off things, but you can have a conversation. And the other, I think, big tip is it should never, ever, ever, ever be a surprise. Unless somebody does something like super egregious punches somebody. I've seen, not here, not at the Granite Group, but I've seen that, had that happen before. Somebody steals something, like that. Yeah. It should not be a surprise. And so you can deal with that tough situation in as human a way as possible.
Gotcha. This episode of Distribution Talk is sponsored by InSQL Distribution Software. InSQL is a fully functional distribution-based software package. I only recommend software packages that were purpose-built to serve distribution. And these folks do it very well at a price point many smaller distributors can afford. Economy doesn't mean compromise. This company is on the cutting edge of distribution-friendly applications like VMI on mobile devices, mobile signature capture, mobile CRM, warehouse management software, and e-commerce development. If you're ready to step up to a fully loaded, scalable distribution package at an affordable price, look no further than InSQL Distribution Software at www.insql.com. That's INXSQL.com. Just something came to my head. What are your thoughts on annual reviews?
I hate them.
I hate them too.
Yeah.
Okay, I despise them myself.
Yeah, they're useless.
Yes, useless. Okay, I'm going to say, and I see so many companies hanging their hat on that.
Yeah.
It just drives me crazy.
Yeah, so we transitioned away from them a number of years ago. And so there's a movement in the world of HR, and like all things in HR, it tends to start startups, tech, away from that and into more regular conversations. So what do annual reviews do? They look backward, right? What do people care about? The money. So that's all people usually care about. So years ago, we decoupled, at the Granite Group, we decoupled the increases from performance reviews, and we got rid of the performance reviews and moved toward regular conversations. So we wanted to de-emphasize that backwards look and emphasize continued feedback and communications with our managers. Didn't go perfectly. It's really hard to change, but I think that step is really important, and we tend to hold on to those annual reviews just because that's how we've done it before. But there's a better way.
Yeah, I recall I had a good friend of mine that had stepped into a role, and it was a sales management role, and he had come in and literally was tasked with doing annual reviews within 6 weeks of him landing there.
Yeah.
And he's like, I haven't known these people for the whole 12 months. How do I do a review? And I think honestly, a lot of the reviews I see, these annual reviews, are people looking back to the greatest of their memories, 6 weeks maybe. And if somebody angered them or irritated them, get a bad review.
Get the recency bias or the halo effect, it all comes into play. It's like what happened in the past month. Yeah.
Yeah, a mentor of mine used to say, sit down every month, just have a quick check-in and grab 12 points of data, over the year, and then look back at it, and you can actually write a real review of some sort. So
yeah, and that may work for some companies, but the traditional annual reviews work for very few companies these days.
That's what I thought. Yeah. And I hear this come up all the time with companies I'm working with. I'm like, guys, stop. Just stop. Stop doing this. Is bad.
I'll tell you a funny story since I left the Granite Group. This is not funny, but people are used to what they're used to. And I get that. And I respect that and understand that. So we haven't had them for several years. And we have this great system where you can put notes and you have one-on-ones and share information back and forth. And it goes both ways, which is incredibly important. This isn't just pushing out. You want to get feedback from your people. And so I started to hear that, well, so-and-so did their annual review. I'm like, we haven't had annual reviews for like 4 years. Well, they do them anyway. I'm like, oh no. So we had people, and I just found out about this relatively recently, who were so holding on to that because they were just used to that and they were very uncomfortable doing something that was different. And I think we see that a lot in our industry too, and a lot of industries. And it's hard, and I get that, but it's really important to at least examine whether those are serving you and serving your people.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like it kind of falls back towards the compliance mentality that you talked about before.
Exactly.
Yeah, versus is this really serving these people?
Right.
Or serving, the company for that matter.
Right.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I want to jump to a little different subject if I could. It's the involvement. You have been involved with, or you are very involved with women in industry right now. Could you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. So giving back in some sort of way has always been really important to me. From the time I worked at UPS in my early 20s, I was on boards. And as I was raising kids, I kind of came in and out of that. And I joined Women in Industry. Their event, which is Elevate, the Elevate conference, was the first industry event I went to when I started at the Granite Group. And I remember I'm an introvert, and that's why I wear a turtleneck, because your audience can't see me, but I turn like beet red when I talk, but that's the only way you can tell.
Sure.
That it's sometimes challenging, but it was, and I don't drink. And so I walked into a networking event. It was just overwhelming. I walked right out, went back to my room, and, kind of composed myself. And then a little while later went back in and ended up attaching myself to some women that I still know today. And that was in 2016. And a couple years later, I got involved on the board and they asked me to join. Christy Maloney was who you may know from Coburn Supply.
Yeah. The Maloney family.
So
sure.
had kind of pulled me in, and then I got involved more in the board. And then last year I started to chair the Women in Industry board. So it's the fastest growing division of ASA. It's a wonderful group of women in an industry that is male dominated, but is wonderful, a wonderful place to work for women and for anybody. It's been a really, really nice way to give back and get involved in the industry. And I hope anybody listening, whatever industry they're in, they're primarily distribution, I would assume. So get involved in some way, even if it's a very small amount of time, because you get much more back than you give.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, it's, frankly, me moving from my family business to, the consulting world, that was as a result of being on the board of a trade association, that I met, and I was, again, it just elevates your game quite a bit. But going back to the women industry, and I do agree with you, I see this actually in other vertical markets, for example, electrical fasteners and some others that have probably over the last maybe 7 to 8 years, maybe 10, have created these women in industry groups, and they are the fastest growing in that particular vertical. What is the mission? Speaking just of the ASA one, what is the mission of that? What do you want to try to accomplish by having the group?
Yeah. So I think we're refining it over time, but, connecting, networking, and giving back is certainly at the top. But where we're really honing in is we're really trying to get more women into our industry and support. And I think this is really our primary focus right now, support the women in our industry. And that's through our annual conference, which is our primary focus. That's through different webinars. That's through the different groups that we have that connect with others. Because I think, if you're working in a supply house with 20 people and maybe you're the only woman or maybe there are 2 women,
right?
Where do you go for support? Certainly, yes, that's great. You probably have it within your company. But sometimes you might want to talk with other women who have had a similar experience.
Sure.
And so we're really trying to bring people together. And I think we hear a lot that it's, everybody's favorite few days of the year. It's certainly mine. And that's been really gratifying.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right that you may or may not have that kind of support inside of your organization. And in many cases, it might be window dressing. It might not be real support. I mean, just calling it as it is, growing up in these businesses, I mean, a very, very male dominant, vertical that you were in, in the plumbing supply and plumbing house, and piping, but really all of the vertical markets, with the exception of beauty supply, it's going to be very, male dominated, and that's going to be difficult. And I know that all of the owners in these verticals, construction related specifically, those verticals, they would really like to see more women coming in. Bill Condren, do you know Bill?
He's my boss, or was
Condren?
my boss.
He's your boss. Yeah, of course he was. Yeah,
yes.
I was gonna
so
say,
was my boss until the other day ago.
Was your boss. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, this was something that, I interviewed Bill a long time ago, and I had that opportunity to talk to him. And one of the things that he shared was, if women make up 51% of the population and the candidates in the workforce, and we're only catering to the 49, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
And that was just really something profound that he shared. Now, it sounds like he got that from you, so he cannot take credit for it. No, that was a Bill thing?
No, okay. It was a Bill thing. And I think it's because we co-lead our women's resource group. We co-led that together. We're both the executive sponsors. And he was the ASA president, I think, during the time that you talked to him.
Yeah.
And he really was ASA president. And he, during his tenure, really focused on women. And I think some people on the outside looking in may go, oh, that seems odd. No, it's not at all. We need male allies, absolutely, to support women in industry for any opportunities. We need men's support. That's why at the Granite Group, our resource group was open to everybody, not just women. And that's a discussion we've had at Elevate. What does that look like in future years, as it is an awesome conference, and as men may actually want to come? What does that actually look like for us? So yeah, it's true. And as companies, we have to take a hard look in the mirror and go, okay, if we want more women to work here,
Yeah.
what does it look like from the outside? Like, do I see myself in that company? Can I see myself working there? And that extends to people of color, people with disabilities,
Yeah.
every
Sure.
dimension of diversity.
What would a company do to try to change, in that? And I know this is a little deeper than thought we might go on this, but I think
Yeah.
the thought that, coming up, with Bill's statement, how does a company transform itself or at least attempt to change?
Yeah. It's not overnight. And I think companies tend to be like, oh, let's get some pictures with some women and we'll throw it up in the website. And,
Right.
fine, but it's got to be authentic. But where it really starts is take a look at your board.
Yeah.
Is your board all white men, right? Take a look at your leadership team. Take a look at your managers.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at the data within your company. And are women making up proportional number of
Mm-hmm.
positions across the company, or are they mainly in administrative or,
Sure.
traditionally female type of roles? So I think that's a really great place to start. Look at the data, see where you are, and then, start to recruit people, start to go to where people are,
Okay.
right? Start to go. If you're always only advertising for jobs on I hate to be stereotypical here, but sports radio, right?
Right.
That's,
Yeah.
you got to broaden that a little bit.
Sure.
And, lots of different things, but there's a little bit of a start.
Yeah. And I think, again, it starts with a decision internally,
Yes.
and then you get to, make these changes or you ask for help or something of that. Because it probably isn't second nature to, the white male board, this is,
Right.
they don't understand. And
No.
yeah, so they're going to have to ask for help here.
No, and as diverse as your company is, as diverse as your company can make it, and I don't just mean in what people look like and how people are,
Mhm.
your company is going to be successful. There's tons of data, more successful. There's tons of
Mhm.
data on that. So it benefits everybody.
No, I agree. I mean, I think those are great points. So you made a change here. You decided to leave the Granite Group and strike out on your own.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that transition.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Yeah, so it's funny. Early on, probably I would say as late as early 2020, as late as March 2020, I never thought that I would be an entrepreneur. I never was a thought in my head. I thought I would work for a company until I retired at 65, 67, whatever. And then the pandemic hit. And my mother died in the middle of the pandemic. And she had a wonderful life. She had zero regrets, but, died of cancer in a way that and I couldn't see her. I saw her a couple of times after I knew she was going to die, but I couldn't see her the rest of the time. And that impacted me obviously very deeply, but I was so busy with work that was also a bit of a blessing. So I kind of held off on any processing of grief for a really, really long time. And then I went through a bad burnout and I did it while I was still at work and I still did my job, but I wasn't giving the 100% that I normally would give. And it took a really tough conversation with Bill to kind of see that and in doing some research myself and kind of claw myself back out of that burnout into being really engaged and happy again. And then coming out of that, we had a series of, this is getting really depressing. I apologize, but it's really important.
It is. No, absolutely. To bring it together.
We had a couple of women who were my age in our family pass away this last year in 2023. And I kind of I had a long range plan after my burnout. I said, I'm going to set a goal for, 2025, 2026. I want to do my own thing and I want to do consulting. And people have been asking me for years, you're going to do it? And I'm always going, no. And I had people who could help me. And so I set it a future date. And then when that happened this year, and randomly I had a CEO text me. We had a mutual friend was like, hey, do you want to talk? And that quick conversation led to the potential for them to be a client as a fractional chief people officer. And so that was the kind of push I needed to make that move earlier, which I think I was ready. The company was ready. And I was deferring a dream that I was just scared to jump on right away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, look, you get a check every 2 weeks, you get health benefits and some other stuff. And there's some stability. And then you decide, okay, I'm going to move all that aside.
Right.
And I'm going to follow my passion. And, passion's tough. I mean, it can be cruel sometimes.
It can be. And I think, for me, all that stuff that I said was more like, okay, what do I want my life to look like? Like I was designing my life, going further out. What do I want to be doing with my life?
Yeah.
Like today I went for a walk in the middle of the day, which I never would have done. I could have done. never would have gone for a half-hour walk.
Right.
And not only that, but I thought I had things to offer in a different way because I don't just do consulting. I do a lot of speaking and advising too. So if I came out, had some core clients, ramped the speaking, which I've done no work on promoting ever, then I could have a kind of diversified, really interesting job that kept me going to different places and traveling, which I love. And you and I have talked about that, like not too much, but traveling, which I love. And my husband also was a consultant for 10 years and then wanted to go back and work in the nonprofit world. So he's a CFO of a mental health center, which he loves, and he's extraordinarily good at it. And so that all kind of came together.
Yeah. Jumping ship and starting up your own gigs, not for the faint of heart, but I think, you're doing it for the right reasons, and I appreciate the thought of you had things to offer. You had gifts to offer. And I think the way I look at my job as well is, I'm in the business of serving people.
Yep.
That's it.
Me too.
And if I can do that, it allows me to, if I want to go take a walk, I can take a walk. If I want to go skiing, I can go ski. But also I get to connect with a lot of different people and I learn things about people. And I get to share in not only the successes, but, in the challenges too. And I think that is one of the great things about being independent and doing, the kind of work that both you and I do.
And I love the work. I love the work.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think, and I think you're going to enjoy, the diversity, of clients. I mean, that's the thing. You start with a couple and then you keep, it snowballs and get another text out of the blue and a couple of those. So no, I think it'll be a fun journey for you. So how does someone reach out? Speaking of texts and whatnot, how does someone find you now in this new space?
Yeah. The 3 parts of my business are fractional HR consulting, which is fractional CPO, which I am, which is long-term part-time. That's you get a fraction of an executive. I know that's sometimes hard for people. We're not seeing that a lot in this industry, but we will. So I do that. I do some speaking and I do some advising, and I have that all under kind of one umbrella, Tracie Sponenberg LLC, because it's just me.
Yep.
So they can find me. I'm the only Tracie Sponenberg on LinkedIn. My email is tracie@traciesponenberg.com. My website is traciesponenberg.com with an IE.
Yeah.
So hopefully if...
We'll have plenty of links. Yeah. We'll have plenty of links. And,
so feel free to reach out. And I love talking about all things HR and wherever somebody's at in their journey. And I love connecting with others, particularly love talking with CEOs and senior leaders. Really what I want to do, Jason, is really get CEOs to view HR as the incredible, capable force that they are within companies. And I want to get HR teams to really view themselves the same way.
Right.
So I love talking about that.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and I am very excited about your journey. I think this is going to be fantastic for you. It's just been a pleasure learning about the person behind the posts here that I see out there. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. My pleasure. And I look forward to crossing paths one of these days.
Yes, me too. Thanks, Jason.
All right. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.